By combining EFT with the best of traditional psychology, you can absolutely overcome your social anxiety completely, no matter how long you've been suffering from it or how intense it is. And it's unlikely going to happen in a single session. However, in this video, I'm going to share with you a story from an actual client, and that's going to provide you with a realistically empowered, optimistic perspective. So stick around until the end of the video and you'll feel hopeful and inspired. Now, I'll start off with some bad news. In the past 14 years, solely having coached people with social anxiety disorder, it hasn't happened a single time that there was a person who resolved their social anxiety within a single session. I'd say the average is about maybe 10 sessions. And some are done in 3, and some take more than 20 sessions. Now, I'm actually one of the latter group, and that's why I'm here sharing this. And I can tell you, I'm very grateful that I've put in all this effort, energy, and money, and sessions, and time, and inner work in order to get to the other side, because it's just worth it. And it's not just that you don't feel scared anymore and worried and obsessed about what people are thinking of you and that kind of stuff. Yes, that all improves and you feel at ease being yourself. You can speak your mind. That is all amazing, but there are other benefits too. You're also not worrying about what's coming up in terms of your future so much, and your self-esteem improves and your self-acceptance deepens, and you just have more joy in life. You just feel happier, you feel lighter, you're more optimistic, and your relationships improve, or you can actually get in one. And your career improves, or you can improve your career if you want to, because you now have that confidence in order to go for these kinds of things. So even if it takes a longer time, it is so worth it. Now, the following is important. There's this big misconception about EFT for social anxiety. So a lot of people, they learn about the tapping and they're like, oh, great, I can use this to shift my emotions, to neutralize shame, anxiety, and shift my beliefs around. And it often works when nothing else works. Amazing. And so they try it for themselves, with just the basics that they find online. And maybe they get a bit of relief, but they don't find that their social anxiety actually improves. And that's just mainly because they don't have enough skill and they don't understand the problem of social anxiety enough, and they don't know how to apply the tapping to the specific targets that they need to focus on that will reduce their social anxiety. However, they decide to reach out to a practitioner and then go have a session with a practitioner kind of to try it out for a session. And then while they make progress within that session, and they notice that they're feeling lighter and more comfortable and more at ease at the end of that hour or 90 minutes or 2-hour session, likely they go back into their life and they're like, my social anxiety still sucks, And then they start drawing conclusions. Well, EFT just doesn't work for me. It may work for other people, not for me. I'm probably just a very tough case, or this is just the way I am. Well, if that is you, I'm making this video for you. Let me tell you a story of an actual client that I worked with. We'll call him George. Not his real name, but George is a good name. So anyway, he had social anxiety from age 16, and when we started working together, he was 32. His social anxiety was just a little bit around his regular friends, about a 3 out of 10, but there was one friend in particular, let's call him Tom, who his anxiety was between 6 all the way up to a 10. On bad days, he would feel that strong, would get really strongly triggered. And at work, around his boss, he also felt very anxious between 6 and 10. And certain colleagues, he always felt high anxiety, like 8, 9, 10, very high levels of anxiety. Now, when we started working, at the end of the first session, he reported feeling calm, at ease, something had shifted. He felt more comfortable and something had changed. I'm like, great, go ahead. See how your week goes, and I'll see you next week. Now, when I saw him for the second session, he reported that nothing had changed, that he had felt a little bit better after the first session, but it had soon worn off and he was back to square one. I told him it's normal, it's fine, this happens, it's a very common story, and we'll just work with what we've got here right now. And so we did, and at the end of the session, he again reported feeling calmer, feeling better, feeling like some weight had been lifted off of his shoulder, and he was quite optimistic. Started the third session, George was now properly worried because session 1 and 2 had not brought any results. So I told him, okay, this is fine, it happens. It's a matter of persistence and applying the tapping to the right targets. Don't worry, it's nothing I haven't seen before. Everything is going to be fine. And we tapped and we addressed things and we addressed his fear and so on and so forth. And at the end of the third session, same story. Fourth session, George is in big distress. He's like, we've had 3 sessions now and I don't see any changes in my life. My anxiety is just as strong as it has been before. I just feel as self-conscious. I still get triggered all over the place. You know, what's going on? It's not working for me. Am I too tough of a case? Should we continue with this? Am I relax? It's okay. If nothing is changing, there is a reason for that. Your subconscious does not feel safe with you holding on to the changes. So then some detective work led us to uncovering a particular imaginary outcome that he had in mind when he was socially at ease. There was a painful consequence that was far more painful than staying socially anxious. And so I pointed out to him, like, look, as long as your subconscious mind is perceiving that your outcome of social ease is far more painful than staying with the status quo, with what you're familiar with, it's going to sabotage your conscious efforts and it's going to actually stop you from making lasting changes. So what we then did is we released the pain, the imaginary pain that he had associated to being socially at ease. We got rid of the fear of that horrible thing happening. And then as a result, he was no longer afraid of that, right? And so things shifted within the session and slightly hopeful, but you know, he had been hopeful before, he went into things. The 5th session I saw him, he came back very relieved because finally he had noticed some shifts and changes in his life. You know, his anxiety was less strong. The strong trigger around his friend was, you know, still there, but not as strong. He felt better around his regular friends, and things were now moving in the right direction. So we had broken the barrier. He was now unstuck. And since George continued to work on the layers of social anxiety, all of the aspects that were making up his social anxiety problem, and bit by bit, step by step, he became less and less anxious and more at ease, and he felt more and more safe to be himself socially, and he is doing great now. Now, just real quick, little interlude. George is a made-up name, but I have actual clients who overcame their social anxiety who share their story on my channel. So if you go to my channel and you look at the playlist, you can find those. So these are real stories. I'm not making them up. It's very, very inspiring to go check that out. And if you want to learn how to overcome your social anxiety completely, you can go to bit.ly/social confidence now. Okay, back to George. Now, if George had believed that he had to shift his social anxiety within a single session, or if he believed that he had to make a profound transformation in a single session, or even if he had given up after a second or a third session, then he would still be stuck. So that's why it's so important to have an empowered, optimistic perspective. And so I'm going to share with you my truth. Might not be the ultimate truth, but this is the truth based upon 6,000 plus hours logged in the past 14 years. And what I can share is this. 1, it's unlikely to resolve social anxiety within one EFT session. Now, it may be possible to resolve social anxiety in one single session. I'm open to it. I've just never experienced it, so it's very unlikely. 2, everyone experiences relief during a coaching session. Now, tapping is very different from just trying to change your thoughts or just take some deep breaths or allow yourself to feel feelings. All of those things have value, but applying the tapping is just so much more powerful and so much more effective in order to shift emotions around and shift beliefs around. So you are going to experience relief when in a session when you're doing the tapping. That's what you can expect. 3, half of the time, that relief right away translates to progress in real life. And that might be a tiny progress, but there are things like feeling less anxious overall, or feeling less intense anticipatory anxiety, less worry, or maybe less upset about the social anxiety, or less upset about the problem, or less beating yourself up, or anxiety leaving faster when you get triggered. Basically, feeling a little less social anxiety and a little more social ease. 4, the other half of the time, the relief from a session doesn't immediately translate to noticeable relief in real life. And the reason for that is because you're dealing with lots of little aspects that make up the social anxiety problem. You know, imagine your social anxiety to be this big, and it's all like smaller pieces that make up the whole social anxiety problem. So there's memories, there's beliefs, there's feared outcomes, there's worries that you have, there's resistance to change, there's non-acceptance. There's just a bunch of things that make up the whole problem. And so it takes time, even with a tool as powerful as tapping, to work through these aspects of the problem. So when you don't notice progress yet after a session, you can just go, okay, this is part of the process. Let's just keep going. As long as you've got a great practitioner that you feel a click with, who's experienced, just keep going. 5, it may take several sessions before you notice lasting relief. It's possible for it to take multiple sessions before you notice lasting changes, lasting progress in your real life. As long as you're working with a great practitioner, and you're actually shifting in within the sessions, keep going. Just trust the process. 6, consider working with someone else if nothing shifts. Now, the story I told about George is relatively rare. The vast majority of people will actually see at least some mild changes after 3 sessions. Now, a practitioner I once worked with, she would only take on clients for a bare minimum of 6 sessions, because that is just a realistic period in which you can actually make some changes. Now, if you have done a whole bunch of sessions and you're still not seeing any results, well, that might be a sign that, hey, maybe this practitioner is not as great as you thought, or maybe there's not a great click, or, consider your options. Just because you work with one practitioner, because I hear people like, oh, I worked with an EFT practitioner before and it didn't help, or it didn't overcome it. I'm like, okay, well, how many sessions did you have? How qualified was that practitioner? How experienced was that practitioner? Did that person understand your problem, etc.? So it might not be tapping that's the problem, but it might be the match that you have with your practitioner. And tapping is just one technique. There are actually many different kinds of techniques with which you can overcome your social anxiety. It's not just the technique, it's also how you apply the technique. That's why I'm talking about a combination of traditional psychology and energy psychology. And energy psychology is like an umbrella, and EFT is one of the spokes in that umbrella. There are other things that you can try out, like Psyche, logosynthesis, TAT. These are all great modalities with which you can also shift things around, and they're very, very powerful as well. So keep hope. Now, I know that it's difficult to find someone who specializes in social anxiety, and that is why I'm in the process of creating social confidence practitioners. I know I've been saying that for a long time, but it's a big project, and I have a bunch of other big projects going on, so I'm doing my best, believe me. Okay, so please stay tight. And until that time, I did create a video on how to find a great social anxiety practitioner that you can check out here. And if you want to be inspired by other people who actually overcame their social anxiety disorder, who tried everything, and then talk about their pain, talk about the process of using EFT and all of the obstacles that they encountered on their journey to going from social anxiety to social ease, go check this out here. Very, very inspiring. It gets you to feel like, oh my God, I'm just like them. And actually, what if there is hope for me too? There is great hope for you too. In closing, I'd like to say that most people overestimate what can be done in one session, and they vastly underestimate what can be done in, what can be done in 10 sessions. Okay, hope this helped you. Go check it out. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.